I shouldn't admit this, but there's been quite a few occasions where I've sent area schedules to clients that are not accurate or don't match the drawings. And when it comes to moving to the next stage of the design in the project, there's always some questions to answer. Why is the bathroom undersized? And it's an embarrassing moment. In this video, you will learn from my mistake. If you've ever worked on feasibility studies or early stage planning, this probably sounds familiar. You draw a plan, then you open a spreadsheet, then you start typing areas manually. And from that point on, the drawing and numbers are completely disconnected. One small change to the layout means going back to the spreadsheet, and it's never quite clear which version is correct or if they even align. This not only wastes time checking over and over again, hoping there's no mistakes, losing the will to live, questioning why you chose a career in architecture. That's happened a few times. So let me propose an easier workflow. In this video, I want to show you a different way of working, where zoning, geometry, and data live together in one place in Rayon. If you want to follow along or try this workflow yourself, there's a link in the description where you can create a free Rayon account. Take this floor plan. We have various pieces of data we'd like to extract into a table, automatically, not manually. The first is the area schedule, and in Rayon, this works through using zones. Zones are really powerful because they have their own properties, and you can also style them so you can work into the graphic communication of your drawing. Take this feasibility study, for example. We have 3 design options here. We've got 3 floor plans that we want to basically build an area schedule for each, so we can compare them and use them as a comparison for the client, so they can see the various options that they have available to them as part of this design proposal. Now, to apply a zone, you want to head to the bottom tab. Now you have the zone option here, or you can type Z. And as you can see, it then starts highlighting the various zones and areas that we have available to us. Now, if we select that element, you'll see that it comes up with zone 67. Now we can call that office 1 or office 2, for example, by changing that at the top here. And then you can apply that to each different zone, adding a zone to each room. And this is a really quick way of applying zones when you already have rooms that are essentially binding that room, that are creating an enclosure, so that zone can identify that as a room because of its enclosed space created by the walls. Now you can select those elements. Once again, you can change them as office 2. Now that might be a WC, for example, so we can change that as a WC. Now in the case where you want to then further break up this room, although this is technically one space, you want to divide it into different areas as part of your feasibility study, you can then start using zone separation lines. So if you head down to the bottom here, you've got a zone divider, and you can then draw a zone divider here, which you can see starts separating and dividing those spaces. So if we select that element here, you can see then you can drag your tag over. We can then apply a zone into these areas like so. And then now you have 3 areas defined by this space and defined by the zone dividers. Now, if you wanted to build a bit of a graphic style using these zones, you can select your area, and I've already got a bit of a color palette here. And this could be, a color palette could be used for maybe different types of offices or different types of spaces. And so in this case, if you want to call them kind of main office spaces, or want to call them, I don't know, assign it to a certain type of team in the office, you can select pick style and then choose one of these colors. So for example, we're going to choose light blue, and maybe this zone over here is associated with a certain type of that office. So that might be, I don't know, retail, for example. We can select those. These then might be a different part of the office, which you can then select like so. And then these rooms down here could then be a different color. You can also then edit and adjust the size of the tag, which we can do here on the right hand side. And you can change the font if you'd like, and the type of font. So we can do that as maybe bold. And then we can do exactly the same for these options. So then you're building basically 3 different area options, 3 different feasibility studies for the same space, and then you can extract that into an area schedule. With a bit of work and some proper labeling, we can get to something like this, where we have this kind of circulation spaces defined. We have the different office options defined. So we've got option A's office, we've got option B offices, for example, here, and option C. So we're now creating 3 different versions of the same building footprint with different spatial arrangements. Now this is really handy, of course, for a feasibility study to show clients various different options that are available to them with the space. And this works particularly well when you start building the tables and the area schedules to present these options to them. And the reason why zones work so well is that they're automatically calculated. There's no manual measuring required. And this is where typically spreadsheets would normally take over, but instead of exporting areas, copying numbers, and formatting tables, everything happens right here. Rayon's table tool pulls zones, names, and areas directly from the model. And now those zones are defined, we're going to start pulling them out into area schedules. Now the way that this works is to use Rayon tables. Now if you select tables on the left hand side and you click the plus button, I'm going to talk you through the process here of how to pull that information out into a table. If you click the More tab at the top, you'll be able to see that you've got categories. Now here you've got walls, block instances, page layers, etc. But all we want to show at this point is just zones. So if we untick wall and we untick block instance, it will have all of our options available, our block A, C, and B, all in one table. Now I'm just going to make that a little bit bigger to show the full screen. But now what we want to do is we want to create the column where we have the areas, where it's got all of the areas defined that are represented in our drawings. And as we update our drawings, it also updates live in the tables. Now at this point, we don't want to show all of the options in one table. We want to separate them out and have a table for each option. And you can do that by editing a filter. So you can add a filter and you can do maybe ends with or includes. So if we do includes option A, we'll be able to create a table that only includes option A. And we can then do more. You can then export that as a CSV or an Excel SX, or you can insert it into your drawing. So we can maybe insert that alongside our option A floor plan. So if you do that, you click insert, you can then draw the table, and then we can have our table alongside that particular option. Now we could do the same for option B. We do exactly the same process, add the column, add the area, change the filter, do includes, and you can see that you've only got the option B. You can then insert the table and drop that alongside your floor plan. And you can do that for each option. You can then also customize your table and start working into it to make sure that the graphics align with the presentation of the drawings and make sure that they're consistent and that you feel like they're suitable. So you can double click into the table. You can select, for example, your title. You can then maybe make that a different font, which will then go with bold. We could then put a background of maybe a gray at the top, and then we can select the rest and we can then adjust that to maybe a light option, with maybe these areas being a very lighter gray. So then you're formatting the table to communicate the information and make sure that it's clear to the client. If you change any of your floor plans or change the geometry in any way, the tables update. No reworking, no second guessing numbers. And if you still need Excel, you can still export it. But the key thing here is that you don't need to depend on it anymore. And sometimes areas alone is not enough. You might need custom properties such as room numbers and floor finishes. In Rayon, you can add custom properties directly to zones. And the way that you want to do this is simply selecting a zone, and you'll see at the bottom here, you've got zone properties. You can click the plus button, and then for argument's sake, you want to add maybe a material finish. So we can do material. We can then change it to either a number, text, image, etc. So we'll just do a text for now. Format, which is value, and then you can then add the value in. So if you do, for example, if we select that floor now, and we then want that particular room to be a particular type of carpet, this one then could maybe be a, let's say a timber finish, or a vinyl timber finish, for example. And once you've assigned some properties to your area, and you can assign multiple if you wanted to add a kind of number option, for example. So if we can even call this option A as just another additional tag to your area schedule. You then want to amend your table ever so slightly to add that column property and any other column properties that you want to add. So if you head over to the table, you can then go to your plus button and then click, let's say, materials. So we get the material finish, and you can see here that you've got that vinyl and carpet appearing on your material. And if you wanted to add your, let's say, option number, which we've added there, which is option A, you can then insert that table again back into your model, and you'll be able to see that you have your table here available. Now I've noticed that this is now removed your filter. So let's just add that filter back on, and there you go. You'll be able to have your table updated with those elements in them. And if you change or push or pull any of these elements, you'll see that the table updates live. Then if you need this table to be customized in any way in terms of column widths or anything like that, you can double click in, you can select some of these elements, you can squash them and make them more proportionate to the information that it's showing. And I think this is where confidence really improves, because the data is always tied to the drawing. No more wondering if the numbers are even still valid. In Rayon, analysis flows directly into your presentation. And the way this works is really simple. You create your page, which you can then set to A3, for example. You can change the orientation. We then want to create a view now into where we have our model canvas, which you can see here where you've got your tables alongside your floor plans. We drop that into place. We can then scale that up to 1 to 200 or 1 to 100 onto the page. Drag it across, and you've got your table and drawing alongside one another. Now this requires a little bit of work to get it on the page, and maybe this needs to be more like A2. And by adding a title block from the block library and adding some text and some annotation, you can see here that the drawing is now existing alongside the table. So you can clearly see the feasibility option alongside the table, which is really handy for building presentations, for presenting to clients and delivering these feasibility options to your clients to make sure that they're clear and that they can be read between one another. And you can see we've got option A, we've got option A furnished, so we've got variations of actually populating the drawings to start adding some of the furniture into the floor plan. We then have option B and option C with some zoom ins on certain elements, and maybe throwing together a bit of a mood board on how some of these spaces could come together to help the client visualize the proposal and the presentation. And so as a presentation, as a feasibility, this is really important. And I think this is such a much more efficient way of delivering feasibility studies with tables alongside them that update live. There's no mistakes. You're not pulling any details out to put them back in together in a different software. They all live here in one place. If you updated a floor plan, if you update an area, it updates the table. And it works really, really well to build a presentation in Rayon. And once you're happy with your presentation, you can export it as a PDF or share a live link that always shows the latest version. This makes stakeholder reviews with clients much clearer, faster, and more confident. Zoning schedules don't need to live in spreadsheets, and they definitely don't need to slow your projects down. When drawings and data stay together, you design faster, you trust the numbers, and you spend more time making decisions, not managing files and reviewing your numbers. If zoning and feasibilities are part of your workflow, this is a much cleaner way to work. You can explore Rayon for free using the link in the description, along with access to the drawings used in this tutorial. Try it out, test it on a real project, and I'll see you in the next one.